Friends and enemies, welcome back to another episode of the CBP. We were here last night. It's just me tonight, at least out of Len and I. I'll be joined by a fan favorite, frequent guest of the show, SB. We're going to be talking coin. I have a list of stuff here we're going to talk about. I'm going to read it to you now, okay? Maybe not word for word, but to give you an idea of what's on the agenda here. MSTR strategy, block earnings, the Coinbase check-in, miners in the news, Trump and mining. We have something SB calls Embrace Debate Corner. We'll be talking about mining nationalization and the TradFi embrace of Bitcoin. And then why new MSTRs are tiny and big, unlikely soon. I don't know what that means. I copied it from our group chat. We're going to find out, though. As always, first things first, the sponsors, EasyDNS, the best place for you to host your content, to host a website, to buy a domain. Mark is the friendly neighborhood registrar, as he always refers to himself on this air, and other places too. We bought a website from Mark or through Mark. Actually, no, we didn't. Someone bought it for us and then we transferred it to Mark. But you can do either or. You can go to EasyDNS and get a domain. They have a couple of different ways to buy them. I know you can have auctions. You can go through like an auction, which is kind of fun, though probably the more expensive option. And then the other option is just to buy outright some, I don't want to say less than desirable domain, but something that people are not looking at buying, that's for sure. Anyway, so you can do all that with Mark. If you want to do some virtual private server stuff, not just Bitcoin stuff, but you can do Bitcoin stuff there too. He will help you. You can get an email account at your new domain. He can help you with email privacy, GPG and PGP, both of them enabled over at EasyDNS, among other things. The number of things that we're not using on our website because we don't have time, at least that's what I tell myself, is huge. So if you want to do that stuff, go over to EasyDNS, start something new today, man. Use Mark, use the website, use the promo code CBP Media, or just tell Mark we sent you, and you get half off your first round of buys. The second sponsor, great team, of course, Bull Bitcoin. You guys know them, you love them. They are one of the few remaining Bitcoin-only exchanges. They're the only Canadian one. ShakePay, not Bitcoin only. Bitcoin Well, not Bitcoin only. Who else is out there? I don't even know the other exchanges. So, I mean, these guys are the only ones. They have... people say liquid, they don't like liquid, whatever. Okay, but you get what I'm saying when I say Bitcoin only. I think they're Bitcoin only too. You can pay your bills over there if you want. If you don't want to sell, but actually buy gift cards or pay bills. I'm not just talking like, credit card bills. I'm talking property tax. I'm talking cell phones. I'm talking, the list of vendors is long, long, long. So basically any outstanding debts you have, you can pay with your Bitcoin through Bills, a platform they acquired some time ago. And they just released a wallet app too. So if you're looking for custodial lightning solution, semi-custodial lightning solution, that's the place to go. You can't beat the Bull team and the Bull suite. We've been working with them for the better part of a year and a half now, I think. Maybe not quite. We signed on with them just around the conference last year, which I think was in June or July. So maybe we're closing in on a year. Anyway, doesn't matter. You guys have been killing it over there. Use the promo code to sign up. You get $21, helps support the show. And yeah, listen, if you don't vote with your money as far as where you buy your Bitcoin, you're supporting stuff that's not Bitcoin. And we try not to do that here. We hope you'll join us in that mission. So bullbitcoin.com and sign up with our promo code. He's got a new picture tonight, the Bull Therapist. These higher for longer rates, are they in the room with us now, SB? What is going on, buddy? Good to see you.
Man, great to be here. Yeah, I just find it so fun because it feels like increasingly Bitcoin is sort of joining with TradFi. It just becomes so inured in TradFi that as someone who is in TradFi but doesn't necessarily have a aggressive Bitcoin strategy where I work, it's a very interesting kind of melding of both worlds together, which I think we're going to talk about today.
We have to, because as you mentioned, you come from that world. I have no experience in that world except for what I pretend to know about when I do the show. And we have a lot of agreement between the two of us, tons of it actually. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners are, in the same boat on a lot of these things, on the facts of the story. And, it doesn't mean that a lot of Bitcoiners support it. Obviously, Len and I have had a number of guests on who are like really hardcore, don't like ETFs, don't like TradFi being included, want to see these people sort of rot in the street and, have fun staying poor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever, man. I think we're going to find out tonight where we have some disagreement, and it looks like we'll be debating some things, or at least embracing debate on the air this evening. So where do you want to start? We have a number of items here. I'll let you pick. I assume you have the same list from the group chat. So I'll let you decide where we dive in, and we'll get rolling here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down to hop into. Let's start with a little mining because it feels like mining's kind of come to the big leagues.
There's a mining question in the chat here, by the way, already. Thoughts on
There
Hive
is.
and HUD 8? I don't know if you have anything on that, but
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It feels like mining's kind of come to the big leagues, and I think that originally it was we saw this riot news where they're buying up a bunch of bit farms, and this is the type of move. This is like a vulture hedge fund type of move where if you see an undervalued company, you got capital, you use that to your advantage, and you're like, yeah, I want to go out and buy these guys for what they're going to come out and say, yeah, we think it's a great price. Of course, Bitfarms comes out and says we think we're higher valued. So I saw that recently. Then you go, oh, the hottest AI startup, Anthropic, wants to buy Core Scientific. Unbelievable. Bitcoin miner recently out of bankruptcy. As we've talked about before, we had BlackRock being a very significant, if not the biggest investor in some of their debt in the bankruptcy proceedings. So very interesting. BlackRock was, I think, in what they call the dip, which is basically lending during the bankruptcy. So, that's signaling a lot. And that was before the ETF started. So that sent Core Scientific up like crazy. And then recently, and you guys had the CEO or co-CEO Dan Roberts. I remember he was on your podcast before, and of Iris Energy, and their stock has exploded recently. And I think, not investment advice, just someone outside observing, they were early on the high performance computing angle where you have the option of going out and using some of your mining capacity for things other than Bitcoin. That sparked Anthropic both signing a deal with Core Scientific and then trying to buy them because they want AI computing power, and Bitcoin miners, of course, as Bitcoin does with everything, have to be ruthlessly efficient. And so it does two things to me. Number one, it's okay. We're in the big leagues now. Like miners, they're owned by the biggest ETFs out there. They're owned by you pull up who owns them. Very high profile companies are very big into a lot of these Bitcoin miners. So they're in the financial system, I feel like, in a big way, and it's hard to see them getting out of it. And then the second thing is, what are these actually worth in terms of the computing power that they've gotten so far? And is there a situation where, is the right path to be purely Bitcoin mining? Is the right path to go in between? Something we've talked about in the group chat is, well, wait a second. If it's much more valuable to do AI computing, then why doesn't every Bitcoin miner just put all the resources towards AI and make more money? So I think it's opening up a lot more interest. And I'm even seeing, I'm on financial Twitter. They call it FinTwit, whatnot. I think you are too. And I'm even seeing, guys like value investors go, I would have never thought to ever look at a Bitcoin miner, but hey, this Anthropic deal for some of Core Scientific's capacity has got me interested. So to me, that's one of the biggest changes in the Bitcoin space recently is kind of mining going to the big leagues. And then, of course, the cherry on top, Trump meeting with them. And then, as I've said to you, I just can't believe Bitcoin's not significantly higher from here. But what are you going to do?
So let's dive into a couple of things there. I want to get your opinion on two things here more than anything. Number one, why do Bitcoin miners continue to mine Bitcoin? I said this to Len the other day, maybe not this week, but last week on the show. Like if AI compute and HPC is really the move as far as the market is concerned, and as far as the best use of energy in terms of turning a profit per kilowatt hour is concerned, why mine?
It's an incredible question. And I think what Core Scientific is figuring out is, hey, we're going to sell that capacity to Anthropic. So I totally agree. Now, I am not an engineer. I'm not in these mining centers, but I think what was interesting was if you compare somebody like Iron to a CleanSpark, for example, right? Because they're two of the biggest mining companies by market cap. CleanSpark doing completely Bitcoin mining, and then they're holding on their balance sheet if they feel like it's a good time to hold, which has been seen as a very solid strategy, and they have been rewarded in the stock market for very high performance. Up until recently, Iron had not been rewarded compared to CleanSpark and some others, they went out and bought a bunch of NVIDIA H100s a while back. And that was very interesting to me because Bitcoin miners, especially 6 months to a year ago, capital is very, very, very scarce. And I think we're going to talk about this a little bit with the MSTR, kind of some of these companies in the future. But capital is very scarce for every company, but especially Bitcoin miners. So if you're out there telling me that, your stock is, I think in Iron's case, it's like $3, $4, $5, and you're raising a lot of very dilutive equity. And instead of using that on buying more mining machines or building up more capacity, and they are doing that, but it's a mix. Instead of doing that, you spend X amount on high performance compute. That tells me that like you kind of had an idea a year ago that this was something that might be happening. So I'm not the engineer. I don't have the knowledge of what is actually the best play. I think where I'm intrigued by is if in the future there's this interesting trade-off with the Bitcoin network where basically if Bitcoin isn't as high as we'd like it to be, or the miners would be, you're shutting off mining machines and you're using more capacity for AI. And then you can kind of flip that switch when the difficulty adjustment, whatnot, Bitcoin price goes higher, you flip to Bitcoin. And to me, I'm intrigued of like, what does that mean for Bitcoin in the future? Is that the capitalistic type of Bitcoin mining where you're going to have other countries, governments doing it, and then that's going to be the more of the kind of
is there a name for that, by the way, when governments take over?
Yeah, I was trying to be nice there. The national. Yeah. So are you going to have capitalistic miners and nationalistic miners, and where the capitalistic miners, maybe they're not mining that much? Yeah. So that's why I've been telling you guys, I'm like, dude, I would love for you to have on some mining execs to ask them this exact question. If they're in high performance computing, why are they in it? Why did they think about getting in it 6 months, a year ago, 2 years ago? And if they're not in it, what's the trade-off? Because we just saw this crazy deal that Anthropic did with Core Scientific. And so maybe why wouldn't you get some of that revenue? So yeah, it's all completely fascinating.
I'll try and keep all my thoughts in line here. But the thing I'm curious about from your point of view, it sounds like you think that buying the miners is more a play on maybe energy procurement and power purchase agreements than it is actually a play on Bitcoin in the medium to long term. Is that
100%.
a fair? Yeah, it's a fair characterization.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing I'm curious about, if you're really concerned about power procurement, fine, not you specifically, but sort of the royal you, like there's got to be better ways to express that view that power is really the thing. Because I think what you're saying there is you trust, the Roberts brothers at Iron to do a better job allocating energy than you do an energy company who's presumably going up in value for the same reasons to go up in value during that same bull market. How do you sort of square that circle? Because in my sort of limited knowledge and understanding of all this, you'd almost be better going with the commodity producer than you would. I mean, I'm calling like an energy company a commodity producer, but you get what I'm saying. Like you'd almost be better going there, I think, wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you go that direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a couple years ago, I remember when the Bitcoin Mining Council was founded, one of the questions people were talking about was, hey, when is ExxonMobil going to go buy a Bitcoin miner, right? Like when are we going to link the energy? And I think that could still happen. But one of the things that I think Iris has been interesting, and Dan talked about this when he talked with you guys when he came in the show, was that they have the background in energy. So they had been investing in private equity energy deals for probably over a decade by the time they started Bitcoin. So at least when they started that several years ago, they were thinking that this is sort of the next frontier of how to best monetize energy. And so I think they're very open that if there's a better way to monetize the extremely efficient energy that we have. And I think because I'm using them because I've looked at them, and they had a press release at one point that they were basically being able to get energy at no cost because of the way that they had set up their data centers, their machines on the grid. They were just using complete excess energy, if not being paid to use the energy. So I think, I guess a part of the question is like, why haven't other people thought of this beyond Bitcoin miners? And maybe the answer to that is simply that AI has taken off like no one thought. Look at the NVIDIA stock price, right? It's gone up 10 times in 18 months. I'm not sure even NVIDIA thought that was going to happen. So if that is an indication of what the market was thinking about AI ramp, then maybe just the energy has not been procured. One of the top places to get the energy is going to be the Bitcoin miners. And so we're going to have a trade-off here between upfront cash and or long-term deals with AI companies where you're not going to have that Bitcoin exposure, or just completely leverage yourself to Bitcoin. And I want to hear that conversation going forward. And that should be asked on earnings calls to companies that have the compute and the companies that don't have it.
So you mentioned the H100 buy. H100 is it's like the enterprise AI GPU, basically. Like if you want to build and run and, sell access to an LLM, this is what you would use. This is the sort of horsepower you would need. I guess my last question on this, and maybe if there's anything else you want to cover on this, we can hit it right after. If energy is the play, maybe you still like the miners for whatever, the reasons you just outlined. But if you're really thinking that high performance compute is what's next, why not buy NVIDIA? And I ask this, in earnest, because if I look at some of the ETFs that do mining, like WGMI, the Valkyrie mining ETF SB has, what is the allocation here? A 4% NVIDIA allocation along with some of the miners, right? And so they have some TSMC, they have some NVIDIA, they have some other stuff. So I think even the miners view NVIDIA as something worth having in their ETFs. I mean, if you're an investor, why not just buy NVIDIA then? What, like, is that more? I mean, if you're, especially in your silo, we talk all the time about how the career risk is just too great. You can't go to your, board or your investment team and say, yeah, look, here's my presentation on Iris Energy, and this is why we should invest in them. Because your board's going to look at you and say, why don't we just buy NVIDIA? Well, how do you answer that question?
Excellent question. And I'm looking up what Iron did. They bought, they've spent maybe 32 million on like 800 H100 NVIDIA GPUs. Yeah, you're gonna want to buy NVIDIA because they have 75% margin when they sell. Now, TSM's come out and said, hey, we think we can take some price up on NVIDIA. And so I think when that happened that day, when the CEO said that, TSM was up, 4 or 5%, NVIDIA maybe flat to down a little bit, whatever. No, you're going to want NVIDIA. I mean, I think the question mark on NVIDIA specifically, briefly, is just that we don't know what the run rate is for full spending on these things going forward. Like, is this an arms race, or is this actually what companies are going to be spending on this for the foreseeable future? So I think that's kind of why, if you actually look at the valuation of NVIDIA for their growth rate, it's not actually that expensive. The question is if the growth rate continues. But yeah, to your point, who's going to make the most money from the transaction? It's going to be the company actually making the chips, the creative design behind it, which is NVIDIA, not the companies that are buying the chips. So I totally agree with that.
Okay, let's move to Square and Block. This is a favorite of yours. I have some Square, some Block. Should mention that either of us could be invested in any things we talk about. Doesn't mean it's advice. I don't give advice because I'm retarded. And then SB obviously is a professional, but has not looked at your specific situation. So he's not giving advice either. What do you want to talk about or start with on Square and Block? Just for people who are out of the loop here, big thing from the last earnings call, at least in our opinion or my opinion, the DCA, the Bitcoin DCA, right? So what else is going on in that camp? What do you think we should be looking at?
Yep. So DCA, I loved it. Now I wanted it to be a lot more because they're talking about investing 10% of Bitcoin gross profits into Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin gross profits have been maybe 150-ish or around there annually from selling Bitcoin. Now, ideally, they're going to have a lot more business than that in the future when they go to a variety of other Bitcoin businesses. But for now, it's really only making money selling Bitcoin. So if you think 10% of the 150 million annually it's really not that much. I loved the signaling of it. I thought that was great. But ultimately, the Bitcoin they already have in the balance sheet is probably going to do more for them in the immediate term. Obviously, an incremental positive, though. I'm not hitting on it. I think what was interesting is when they discussed Bitcoin this earnings, and this will lead into some of the other stuff we're going to talk about. Jack on the call said, we get tons of questions about Bitcoin from investors. And I think what we have to understand is that, me and you and most people listening to the show, I mean, we love Bitcoin. We love Jack. We agree with Jack on what Bitcoin can potentially do for the future of humanity. TradFi does not believe that. I mean, I would say 90% plus does not believe that, especially the people that are covering Block on an investment basis. I mean, they're payments people. They're covering PayPal too. They're looking at Fiserv. I mean, they're comparing Toast versus Square in terms of restaurant business, stuff like that. So they're not a requirement of their job is not to be well versed in Bitcoin. And if anything, if you are in this financial system and you're looking at these companies and that's your job, you're probably disliking Bitcoin. So going back to Block, Jack goes, we get so many questions in this. We're just going to write about it on our investor letter. We're going to talk about it. What was very interesting was not even one question about it in the earnings call. So yeah. I would say that I would say that Bitcoin best case scenario is flat, and probably, in my opinion, is actually a negative right now for their stock price. That's my current assessment, just my opinion.
How do you square that with the stuff you've seen from DeFi Technologies, from MetaPlanet, which I know you know a little bit about, from Semler Scientific? I realize these guys are sort of part of this wider microcap march to a Bitcoin treasury strategy or a Bitcoin balance sheet strategy or a Bitcoin DCA strategy as part of an attempt to pump a stock price in what's basically an illiquid equity. But like the trend is going that way. I think you and me both agree that even in the traditional finance world, whether these people are ready to self-custody or not, there's at least some appreciation, even from the sort of most ardent naysayer, that, yeah, we have to start looking at this. It's that sort of 1 to 5% allocation thesis that's becoming more prevalent. What's holding these companies back? Why is it a neutral to negative sentiment on something like a Bitcoin DCA? Like you said, it's small, very conservative. And I think it shows two things. One, it shows that he's not going to bet the farm on Bitcoin. It shows he's got, an even temperament on the asset, even though he's a huge Bitcoin bull. And number two, that he's not willing to sacrifice the stock price right off the hop, as far as the sentiment and the return that he might get from the market. Even though, on the sort of larger cap side, MSTR, they've absolutely crushed the last 3 years on the same strategy at arguably much more dangerous levels in terms of like their actual market cap and free cash flows every quarter. So why is it negative to neutral? I can't understand this.
Yeah, so this is where I think me and you disagree modestly on a couple things.
Oh no, here we go.
No,
okay.
but this is great, and no one's necessarily right. So the audience can decide what they think too. But I think you are giving TradFi too much credit here. I think that's part of it. I think what you're just saying there and being forward looking for this, the TradFi is not viewing it that way. The way they're viewing it is, they got their financial model and they got, hey, I'm comparing Square Seller, which is about half the business. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at that and I'm saying, what's the growth rate on that? What are the earnings on that? What's the margin on that? How does that compare to Toast? How does that compare to Fiserv's Clover? How does that compare to a variety of other PayPal? PayPal certainly is sort of on that small business to enterprise type of payment company. Then they're also looking at Cash App and they're going, all right, like Cash App's kind of new. It's sort of trying to be a app for a bank. So there aren't really any perfect comparisons, but the financial analysts looking at this are going, all right, what's the growth rate on Cash App in 24 versus 23? What's the monetization rate? Are they going to take that up? Are they going to take that down? Are they growing customers? So that is what is getting their, okay, I'm going to put a multiple on a Cash App earnings expected for 2024. I'm going to put a multiple on the Block earnings. Then they're going, man, why are they fucking spending so much time on Bitcoin? They're making almost nothing from this. Like, this is a distraction. It's not driving the stock. Why are they even putting any money into this at all? And I think that's why it's being viewed at best as a nothing and probably negative. Now, I would say, as someone, and I would even leave Bitcoin out of it. I would say, if me personally, if I'm analyzing this company, I'm looking at the Bitcoin and I'm looking at, okay, this is an option value, because ultimately, if they can make some money off of this global remittance option, I mean, like, and I can, if I'm an analyst, I can give Jack some credit. I can give him, I don't have to give him the benefit of the doubt, whatever. But if I'm able to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt and try to build a little bit of a model and saying, hey, there's this massive total addressable market TAM in global remittance. If Block can get X percentage of that, you charge X and then have a margin on X. Here's a build that I could potentially get to this being worth 5, 7, 10 billion, whatever it is. So that's what I would be doing to try to sort of talk about the option value. But I'm not seeing that analysis being done. What I'm seeing is that basically the analysts looking at Block are saying title doesn't matter, Bitcoin doesn't matter. Best case, it's nothing. Worst case, it's a distraction and a money sink. And I need Cash App to continue its high growth rate, and I need Square to return to a higher growth rate to accelerate, which a Clover is doing, which is their competitor, which Toast is doing, and which Jack has talked about. Hey, I'm running Square for the first time in years. I'm focused on it. We will see revenue acceleration growth in the back half of the year. So I think that's what they're all focused on. With one caveat to, if they're 500 or 750 million of Bitcoin, whatever it is right now, yeah, if that 5X's, like, yes, we're going to have a huge impact on what Block's valuation is. But comparing it to a MicroStrategy or similar, MicroStrategy, they have $15 billion of Bitcoin, and their software company is worth $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Block is worth about 40 billion right now, and their Bitcoin's worth $1 billion. So, or less than $1 billion. So that's really the main difference. Is Saylor, his whole thing is about Bitcoin. Jack, if Bitcoin goes up some, great, but it's really not what's driving the value of the stock right now.
But why is the premium so high on MSTR then? And it's 0 on Jack's company. That's, by basically any tangible measurement, a better company. Why? Is what I don't understand. Maybe there's no good answer for that, except that people expect something from Saylor and something different from Dorsey. To me, it's like, clearly, and we talked about this offline. Like, if I look at the Square business, it's better. It's a better business than MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy's business was so bad that they basically pivoted to being a Bitcoin development company, whatever that means. And no one seemed to care. The stock just keeps going up when Bitcoin goes up. It is a Bitcoin exposure play. Why can't Dorsey leverage that? Like, I'm kind of, it's a rhetorical question at this point. It's so weird to me that in the financial space, there's a gap in when and where people appreciate certain strategies. It's bewildering to me.
So I think a couple things, all excellent points. I think number one, yeah, I'm looking at the terminal right now. I got Block's got 36 billion enterprise value. So then if I compare that to, Block, their earnings for 2024, they're not going to be any, they're not going to be huge to the extent, like basically Block's kind of an expensive company on their earnings, but that is because the expectation is these guys are going to grow significantly. So it's not like you're paying, well, and again, like I said earlier, Nvidia is not that expensive, but it's not like you're paying a 60, 70 times multiple for Block. I mean, basically the estimates on the street, it's like 2.7 billion EBITDA in 2024, 3.3 billion in 2025. So you put 35 billion on that. I don't personally think that's that expensive. And I think the stock's been higher than it has been before, but that's kind of what it's trading on. Whereas, so like basically if Block is going to get the benefit of Bitcoin, you have to buy in already to the valuation of the payments business.
Mm.
And maybe if you're in Bitcoin, you don't really want a payments business because you want to just invest in Bitcoin. Whereas with Saylor, and yeah, I love wanting to talk about MSTR because I thought he said some really interesting stuff in the most recent earnings call. So the Bitcoin premium was asked, and like we've discussed this, but just for the pod, I mean, basically he's running at 100% plus Bitcoin premium, where rough numbers, don't quote me on them exactly, essentially MSTR is worth 30 billion, around 30 billion. The software business is worth around 1 billion, and their Bitcoin is around 15 billion. So essentially the Bitcoin is being valued at 100% premium. And this was about the price that it was when they had the earnings call a month ago. And he was asked about that. Why is this premium so high? Because the premium was 40% prior to the ETF, went down to 15 to 20% after the ETF, but then it's come roaring back. So it's like, okay, why is it so big? And he basically said that, and I'm quoting him from the call, if you thought you could generate 8% accretion per year, there's no reason why you couldn't justify a 100% or more premium in that asset value. And he used the 8% because essentially that's what he's getting when they raise convertible debt or equity at a very big premium and buy Bitcoin with it. And then I'm continuing his quote. If you could generate an 8% accretion more often than once a year, if you could do it from quarter to quarter or every other quarter, which essentially he's been doing, it's quite possible to come to, quote, any number of different premium calculations. So this guy is pouring gasoline on the bull hopium here. But he's been right. You can't go against this guy. I thought it. I think most people thought it. I mean, Jim Chanos fucking thought it. The guy that his hedge fund is now gone, partly because he bet against MSTR, I think. Don't quote me on it. But everybody thought this Bitcoin premium was going to disappear after the ETF. And it not only hasn't disappeared, it's gotten even higher. And then it's the self-fulfilling prophecy where if you issue equity at 100% premium, or better yet, issue converts at a 40% premium to the stock that's already at 100% premium, you're just buying amazing amounts of Bitcoin at great prices, because it doesn't matter if the price went from 67 to 65 when the premium was 140%. So to answer the question, MSTR, it is purely a Bitcoin premium arbitrage, Bitcoin on steroids play. Block, much different type of play.
Do you want to talk a bit about the current state of MSTR's convertible notes? I haven't really looked at where they are in terms of repayment schedule or anything like that. And maybe talk about the latest offering. I think he ended up increasing the size of that offering a week or two after the initial announcement. What do you know about that?
Yeah, so I'll start. Let's start with the 2025 bonds. So 0.75%, 1225s. And actually, let me start briefly before. Like, what is the point of a convert? The point of a convert is, because like the question is, what's the point of it from the buyer side and the seller side? The point of it from the buyer side, if I'm buying a convert, I want a typical bond, so a fixed payment, and which he is giving in some of these 1-0 coupon, but you want a fixed payment, but you're also getting the upside if the equity does well. So that's ultimately what he's offering bondholders. And the perfect example of this is the 0.75% 1225s. When he issued those in December 2020, the price of MSTR at that point was not even close to what it is today. The conversion price, usually it's a 40%. Usually it's a 40% premium. The conversion price, 398. So with the stock price at 1496. So actually, let me ask you, do you know? Let me ask you to take a guess. So the 1225 bonds, the conversion price that you convert in it is 398. The MSTR stock price is 1470. What do you think the price of the bonds are?
They got to be cheap, but
well, remember, you can convert these into equity at 398.
Yeah, I know.
And par is 100.
Why don't we split the difference? Maybe it's 275. I don't know.
That was good. Yeah, 375.
Okay.
So it added 275. So that is unheard of in bond land. Unfucking believable. Most bonds, best case scenario, like if you buy a high yield bond that does really well, you're maybe looking at like 110, maybe. If you buy an investment grade bond and rates rally and the bond rallies, maybe it goes from par to 120, 130 plus the coupon, but 100 to 375, that's insane. But so that was the benefit from the buyer. The buyer wanted equity like upside and got it, and they got paid 0.75% annually. The benefit from Sailor is that when Sailor is issuing these bonds, it's very cheap debt. The 0.75% compares to the 6.125% coupon he has on secured debt on a software business and the Bitcoin they bought with that issuance. So it's a lot cheaper, which is great for him. And then the other point is that they're issuing these at a 40% premium to the current stock price. So if I look in the most recent bonds that were issued, the conversion price for those ones are 2,043. So if you're Sailor, you can either pay, in this case, it's 2.25%. I can pay 2.25% for about 8 years, and I raise equity at 2,043 in 8 years, or I raise equity at 1470 today.
Mm-hmm.
Why not raise the equity at 40% higher? And so that's why it keeps doing these. And that's why when you have 100% premium and then you're raising the converts at 40% and you're paying 2.25%, 0.75%, there's 1% ones. When you're doing that, you're just making incredible. Another one was 0.875% earlier this year. When you're doing that, you're making incredible stuff. One other point too. So the 0% 2027s. So this is fun because he raised these in like the height of it. So the conversion price is 1432, actually pretty high. I think the stock price is about 1,000 when they did that. So if I look at the historical pricing of those bonds, those bonds, you could have bought those bonds for 33 cents in the dollar in November 2022. Insane. They're now 125.
Yeah.
So this is just an incredible display from him to have the balls to do this, because I've been on this program before and I've said this has been irresponsible that he's raised all this debt, but he had the conviction that, you know what? No, Bitcoin is going up. And I know it's going up, and worst case scenario, it's going to rebound, and these converts are going to be able to be converted to equity, and they have been, and it's been just incredible.
It's been a gangbusters trade for anyone who's been in it. I'm curious if it's even worth talking about the soft whimper of the quote unquote Sailor gets liquidated at X Bitcoin price crowd. Like, these people have basically disappeared off the face of the earth like the dinosaurs. And, you know, I think it's probably for good reason. There's not really much talk about this as Bitcoin sort of consolidates here between 65 and 70,000 for the third month in a row. Is this worth discussing anymore? Does he have anything to be afraid of? Maybe is the broader question. Like you mentioned there, you know, on the maturity date, you know, 2020 or 2027 or whatever you just said, like, you know, the odds of Bitcoin being at such a low price that it affects this whole bond offering operation, probably pretty low. But in the interim, I would imagine you're in the camp, and you've been in this camp for a long time. It's not like you just started thinking this, that he doesn't really have much to worry about in terms of these things, you know, giving him a problem on a low Bitcoin price. We're sort of out of the woods in that regard.
No, because yeah, the 2025, I think the notice was just out that the people are going to convert, so they're going to get equity there, and so the next one are the 2027. So we got plenty of time before that, and basically he's proven he has market access for more converts because they've raised 2.1 billion now over the first 6 months of the year, and then even the secured bonds off the software and the debt that they each time they raise converts, because it was debt issued after the secured bonds by the software, that actually now serves as collateral for those bonds. So I don't know if he's going to tap that box again for new buys, but that bond has 500 million outstanding, and depending on the documents, I don't totally know, but depending on that, very easily, maybe you would see a refinancing of that and maybe even more from there. I don't know for sure, but no, he doesn't have anything to worry about right now. I mean, look, in the draconian scenario where Bitcoin drops 75% from here and goes to 15K, I mean, yeah, like he's assuming these 25s are gone, he's got 1.05 billion 27s, 500 million 28s. I think those are secured, those are fine. So basically the unsecured stuff that he'd have to refinance because he doesn't if they're not going to convert the stock, he has to refinance. They're the 1.05 billion 27s, 800 million 2030s, 600 million 2031s, 700 million 2032s. So
$3 billion worth of
it's a lot,
yeah,
but it's also not a lot if you compare it to, oh, the company's worth 30 billion. 3 billion debt on 30 billion of company worth is tiny in the leverage finance markets.
Yeah, it's not bad. So we've done a little bit of a dive here in everyone's favorite Bitcoin company. Now let's talk about everyone's least favorite. Coinbase. They had their earnings some time ago. Actually, we didn't have you on when they had their earnings, but there's a lot of talk about Coinbase because they're in the news for all the wrong reasons half the time, SB, and then all the right reasons some of the other times. You got, and we'll talk about the sort of Biden administration, Trump camp here, using Coinbase, not using Coinbase to help secure donations. Coinbase obviously doing ETF custody, and then also being sued by the SEC at the same time. What's going on in the Coinbase camp? These guys they got to be having a hell of a time over there.
So long-term listeners of the pod might be surprised here, and you might be surprised too.
Oh, here we go.
Coinbase is doing a good job. I have positive things to say about Coinbase, and I'm not positive everything. Obviously, the shit coining I don't like. I've never liked. I will never like it. But yeah, I'll read off some stats here because some of this stuff's kind of crazy. So 1.32 billion revenue is up 70% year over year in 1Q24. Pretty damn nice.
Yeah.
We got 775 million transaction revenue is up over 100% year over year. Pretty good. 53 billion consumer trading volume was up 153%.
That's a ton. That is a ton for a bull market stretch. That seems like a lot to me, but okay, continue. Yeah.
And it was up from 29 billion in 4Q23. So that's a pretty significant 1 quarter jump. And I think this one's powerful for kind of the investors in it. The 644 million EBITDA was wait a second. I was reading off the Wall Street estimates. So those actually underestimate. They had 1.59 billion revenue. So there you go. It's even better. So even better than what I expected. Wall Street was expecting all that. They have 1 billion EBITDA. So that's up, I think, from around 300 million in the quarter ago. So the EBITDA is up basically 3 times. The 1.59 billion revenue is up from 736 million in the first quarter of 2023. So it's more than double. And then this is the beautiful part of Coin is that their OpEx only gained 5% quarter over quarter. So what they learned, so basically the story of Coin is that in 2021 they went gangbusters, had an incredible run. I think made maybe like 4 billion of earnings, and then they thought new paradigm shift, crypto's taking over the world. Investing all this stuff in all these crypto VC assets, like let's get fucking blockchain rewards and all this stuff. Invested like crazy, and then when the bear market happened, they were burning cash like nuts. Burning 500 million of cash a quarter because they had way too many costs versus revenue. So what they've done now is they've basically kept the costs flat, and the revenue's gone up. And so when you're in finance, I mean that's beautiful. That's basically what NVIDIA is doing. NVIDIA is having incredible revenue and the costs are pretty much flat. Same thing with Coin. So I can't hate on them in terms of the results. Now, do I dislike the fact that they're a shitcoin casino and their earnings are from that? Of course I can. I don't love that. I mean, 33% of the trading volume is Bitcoin. So what does that leave you? Now, some of that's Tether too, which is interesting, and USDC at 13% Ethereum. I don't love that it's 13% Ethereum, right? Like, why I want it to be 100% Bitcoin, but I understand that they're making money, and if they're investing that money in doing things that help the Bitcoin community, like, being the custody. I mean, I guess that's the ultimate question, right? It's like, if you're a company that's doing things to help Bitcoin, does it matter if you're getting the money from shitcoins or not? Right? It's like the philosophical question, and I'm not sure we totally have the answer for that. But what I will say is the fact that they're enabling and they're the storage for and the custodians for the ETFs. I mean, that's a wonderful data point, is it not?
It is, but I can't figure out. I mean, the Biden administration is, bipolar in a lot of ways. I mean, we joke about this all the time. These guys don't know what they're doing. They don't know their sort of head from their ass. And you see it all the time in the way that they address these new technologies. It's not just crypto, by the way. It's AI. It's, encrypted messaging. It's everything basically, except student debt forgiveness, which they're all aligned on at all times. I think the question for me as a Coinbase guy, and like I hesitate to say that I think Coinbase is out of the woods, because I still think there's potential here as Bitcoin continues to eat up market share, and it will. Ethereum just hasn't caught up in market share, and the idea that a coin a token like Solana, or I don't know. I really only know Solana and Ethereum besides Bitcoin, to be honest with you. But like, you know what I mean? Like the idea that something else is going to eat into Bitcoin now is pretty low potential. And the thing that worries me, especially because Coinbase serves a, 100% US market basically at this point. I think maybe there's some Canada, some Europe. I'm not sure. But the thing that worries me is when I look at that market, what do I see? I see a lot of people who have less and less money to gamble away on shitcoins. And less to save in Bitcoin. And you need both those things to keep that business running at this clip you're talking about, right? Where OpEx is so easily exceeded by their profit margins. And so I'm worried about that. Does that ever come up on a call? Is that something I should be worried about? I mean, you dive, somewhat deep in economic data, I'm sure as shit deeper than me. But I look at this stuff, and one of the things, this is actually a broader concern I have about Bitcoin, that as people get starved out, literally and figuratively up here in Canada, they're going to have less money to put in Bitcoin and this other stuff. And then you're going to see the operating margins of these companies go the wrong way. Fair or no?
Of Coin? Yeah, I mean, I guess Coin would probably argue that if people want to buy Bitcoin, then they would just shift to buying Bitcoin on their platform, probably. But I agree with you. It's a casino, right? Like if consumer spending is in decline, casino should be in decline. And this is an easy access casino on an app. So if you have less money, you're going to spend less. I think that's totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I that's one of my big concerns. And is there anything on your mind about this base thing they have, which I think is like some kind of, like, what is it? It's like a shopping / send. Like, I really don't know much about it. I'd be curious if you have any thoughts on that. It's on my list here that I just want to touch on if you know something about it. But if you don't, then
I
don't feel obligated.
not.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is, honestly. It's probably some nonsense. Okay, we're gonna move on now to hold on.
Huh. Oh, there it is. Nice.
Okay, we're gonna be talking about Trump and his recent embrace of
God, so good.
Bitcoin and mining, right?
God,
is that a fair characterization? I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was so pumped to see that. Oh, and also, by the way, I misspoke earlier. It wasn't Anthropic; it's CoreWeave. Right. Did for Core Scientific. Yeah. So Trump and Bitcoin mining. I mean, SB, the woke antidote. This is where I'm coming from in terms of the show. Obviously, I haven't done one in a while. We're looking to do some soon. I know I always say that when I come on, so you shouldn't believe me. But we'll see. But yeah, so Trump, look, I think what's funny is I'm always seeing these tweets. It's like, oh, progressive Bitcoiners, where are you? Like, oh, like they got to start getting some politicians from that scene. And I'm like, dude, they're communists. Communists don't like freedom. Why would they ever like Bitcoin? So maybe there's a couple of them out there. I don't know, but it doesn't make sense. So, of course, it's a natural evolution of someone that likes freedom to be pro-Bitcoin. I think Vivek probably sold him on it. If I had to guess, probably going like anti-CBDC because Vivek said that in the debates and got a great amount of applause and people loving that. And Trump is Trump is laser focused on what moves the needle. And I'm sure he saw that and got a talking to from Vivek and was like, man, I don't know what this thing is, but I got to start talking about it. I think Trump Jr. I'm seeing on Twitter is more into this. So, what's the downside here? Because like if you're Trump, are you losing any votes at all from embracing Bitcoin? No, the boomers aren't fucking Twitter. Fox News isn't covering this shit. No way. But are you gaining votes? Of course you are. So I love it. I think it makes total sense. Do I think Trump totally grasps the concept? No. Do I think he grasped the concept of a lot of things? No. He's shown that he has good instincts many a time in not grasping the concepts that much, but having smart people around him talk to him about these things. When I think the Bitcoin miners talk to him and are like, hey, we can lead in AI, we can lead in cryptocurrency mining, and we can make it in America, does that make him excited? Of course it does. So I think they pitched it to him perfectly from the outside looking in. He's in it, and he's going to start talking about it at his rallies. And if he gets more and more people cheering, he's going to keep talking about it. And if he gets more money, he's going to keep talking about it. So I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. I was so excited that night when all those photos came out, and it's beautiful.
Is it fair to say that every politician now has to have a well-articulated stance on Bitcoin and crypto before this election cycle really ramps up, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting there. I mean, how could you not? How could you ignore a voting base like that? Every single election, everyone asks Republicans and Democrats, are you going to cut Social Security? Are you going to cut Medicaid and Medicare? And, okay, so what do we think now?
Is that your boomer? Is that your boomer like moderator voice? Like, what was that? Who are you impersonating there? Is that Chris Wallace? Like, who was that?
Well, I'm thinking back to Dylan. What's his name?
Oh,
I do Metaplanet.
Yeah.
Dylan Law.
Leclerc.
Yeah. So he had the tweet out that was like, Trump's talking about Bitcoin in the same breath as a Social Security Medicare. And I think that's right. I think I said that to you. Like, I think that's right. we need to be reaching out to the boomers and saying, we're not going to cut your boom spending on your healthcare. And we need to reach out to the Zoomers and millennials and say, we're not going to hurt your Bitcoin that you have. And I think that's the perfect way for him to look at it. And to your point, I think more and more politicians are going to be asked by a base of voters about their opinions on this very important matter.
I actually love this. Len and I disagree that this matters. Obviously, we disagree on like it used to be like 5% stuff. Now it's like 25%. But like I think it's so important. And the reason I say it's important, as you mentioned, okay, Trump, I don't think as in terms of like granular details, he just doesn't have a grasp of this, nor does he have a grasp of like Russia, Ukraine, or Israel, Palestine. But it doesn't matter because the fact of the matter is, no one has a granular grasp of those things at the highest levels, clearly. So what he's doing, to your point, is saying, look, this is something that I think will help me garner support, help me gain traction with this voting block, which I noted the other night. There's no more apathetic group when it comes to voting than Zoomers and millennials.
That's
like you have to drag me to the polls, man. And, I think a lot of people are in the same boat. But if you tell me that you're going to protect my Bitcoin, which, by the way, I don't have a house, I don't have a pension. Fuck, I probably don't even have a job or a box of Kraft dinner in the cupboard. But, I've been gambling on Coinbase, pushing the stock price higher for the last 2 years. I got that. I don't want you guys to fuck with that too. You've already fucked with everything else. I think that's a pretty good strategy. I'm curious, put your blue hat on for a second. Do you think that the Biden camp, I mean, clearly they're engaging with Coinbase as far as like taking donations. That's one thing. I think that's sort of tertiary marginal stuff. But do you think that they're going to release a statement on Bitcoin pretty soon? Because really, when I look at Trump, Biden, the Bitcoin thing, even the broader crypto thing, people ask all the time, what does it matter if Trump wins the presidency? Well, I'll tell you what happens if he wins the presidency. Gensler is gone immediately. Warren is neutered immediately. All these people who are talking about anti-crypto this, anti-crypto that, they're gone. They're powerless. They get the legs cut out from underneath them immediately. Even if Trump doesn't do anything with Bitcoin and reneges on all of the things he's saying about custody and whatever, and just is neutral, does nothing, the price still rips. If Biden wins, these people are empowered and they gain more traction. They gain more power. They're taking scalps, they're eating corpses, whatever demonic symbolism you want to use for gaining power, and they're going to use it to crush your assets. So does Biden need to get that party in line before the election? Liz has been pretty quiet, to sort of the credit of the Democratic machine here. But I'm curious, is this a thing that they're going to have to come out and talk about? And maybe the follow-up question, are we going to get a Bitcoin or crypto national debate question for the first time?
Yeah, I guess the thought on that is if we did, it probably has to be Fox News, because they know that it's a winning issue for Trump, so they don't want him to have anything good for that. But yeah, in terms of if Biden has to come out, I'm of two schools with that, because on one hand, I think
when you say, I should stop you, he's going to be led out by somebody, usually holding his hand or his arm, right? He's not actually coming out. He's being led out by somebody. Yeah.
God, it's bad. Yeah, even Bill Ackman is starting to notice that, right?
Yeah.
The general's been tweeting about that. God, his friends probably aren't too happy with that. But Mark Cuban is not happy with Bill Ackman.
God. American politics is so great. I love it.
Anti-climate change guy owns 3 private jets and a yacht, I think so.
I love it.
What are you gonna do there? Yeah, gotta get my woken for this pod. But, yeah, in terms of Biden, look, if he thinks, and it's not him, if the people around him feel like they can get additional votes, either siphoning them back from Trump or expanding to a new market, maybe they come out more positive. But on the other hand, if they potentially feel that Trump's already got this interest group down, then maybe they say, yeah, we don't even need to do much of anything. We'll try to triple down on, we'll call Trump, we'll say Trump values highly risky cryptocurrency instead of spending money on Social Security. Like, maybe that's an attack line. If Dylan LeClaire, the guy's name, he says, Trump should do $1 billion strategic Bitcoin buy, then Biden comes out with an attack commercial and says Trump's gambling with your money, and we're going to ensure that we have Social Security, Medicaid for the future. I don't know. That's a possible line of attack. I'm not in the strategy sessions of the people around Biden, but look, I mean, it's hard to think these people are that smart. I mean, what has been happening to the world recently, and what is America's place in it? Again, putting on the woke hat on, what's been happening there, and I think the policies are dreadful around the people in Biden. So they probably already messed up giving Trump this opening, and will they continue messing up and just letting him have this? It's very possible. Now, are there going to be money coming in saying, hey, be positive on crypto because then we're going to give you money? If that happens, then great, he'll be positive. But I think if you've got the money, why would you ever direct it towards Biden? Direct it to Trump, grow the fund. David Bailey writes, been talking about all these donors rolling in. Join that, and let's get rocking and rolling on getting a pro America, pro Bitcoin mining stance in the White House. I'm
very excited to hear. I mean, there's rumors swirling. I said this to you yesterday. There's rumors swirling that Trump is going to be on All In this week. Obviously, Chamath and Sachs host a fundraiser. I can't imagine they do that without a rider about a podcast appearance. And those guys will ask him important questions that are all sort of in. They're able to weave one common thread through them: debt, deficit, war spending, the economy, and Bitcoin. And those guys care about it. They talk about it often. Chamath and Friedberg especially talk about it. These guys all have one foot in that in that realm at all times, whether they want to or not, because of their involvement with the tech industry. I think that's going to be an important interview. And one thing I can't figure out, you can put it in your vocab for this too. Why do a debate at all if you're Trump? Like, why bother? You're going to get a guy in Biden who's clearly going to be on all sorts of uppers and held together by duct tape and threads. Why do a debate at all? Why not just do the podcast circuit? Why not do Rogan, All In, Tucker, Lex, and I don't know, pick a right wing one. Do Kara Swisher's show or something, whatever she's doing, or pick a left wing one, I should say. Do those shows and skip the debates and tell Biden to do the same thing. And see how it goes, right? That's like, to me, that's easy strategy. They won't do it. And for the life of me, that kind of stuff from Trump's camp drives me fucking nuts. You got any opinions on that? Of course you do. What are they?
I do. I agree with you. I think that if you're the leader, you don't do debates if you don't have to. And Trump didn't do any of the Republican debates. So why not keep that same philosophy going with Biden? And I think Trump is leading right now. And I think that the media will only use his answers to attack him. The media, when he does a CNN debate, he will not be debating Biden. He will be debating Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. I mean, these are not unbiased moderators. These people hate Trump with passion. And do we really think, it's convenient that the CNN one is the first one? Do we think that do we think Sleepy Joe is going to go on Fox News? I don't think so.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Okay. You want to hit anything else? Are we done?
Should we finish up with Embrace Debate TradFi timeline?
Okay. Let me articulate my position on this, okay? Because I think I'm being unfairly characterized here by you and your camp about my timeline. Your camp, I think your camp is unfairly characterized my position here. I do not think that all this stuff is like, a year away. And although we just spent 15 minutes talking about the election and the sort of relevance as far as the political realm and the mainstream realm that Bitcoin suddenly has, TradFi adoption is difficult because, as the saying goes, trying to convince somebody of something when their paycheck depends on them not being convinced of it is, the most difficult thing on the planet. Traditional finance requires that this game continues to run at, top speed or something close to top speed for the foreseeable future. And if you think that, Bitcoin is here to stay, and we both do, and you think that Bitcoin's adoption is accelerating, not only because of quality changes and quality improvements on the network and the asset, but also because of just this like broader understanding from people in both the Bitcoin space and the TradFi space that the other side of the equal sign, the government spending side, the policy side, is just going to push this thing to infinity, then you have to imagine that the more that happens, you're going to cross some threshold. I think the difference between our opinions is only in the threshold required for, the inertia to become exponential. And, whatever that threshold is for you, it's probably a little more than it is for me, but I think we're getting pretty close to it now. And, I know you and me talk all the time about this mythical 100K Bitcoin. You think that it doesn't matter because you are in this, and I'm going to unfairly characterize your position now as your camp has done to me. I think you think it doesn't matter because you look at stuff on the terminal and think 100K Bitcoin, what's the market cap? It's insignificant, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what matters. What matters is if everyone stops, and I've said this to you before, but I'll articulate it for people who are not in our little group chat there. If everyone stops putting 100% of their savings into indexing and starts only putting 85% into indexing and 15% into Bitcoin, it's a problem for the traditional financial markets. And it's a problem for pensions. It's a problem for a lot of things. At 15% Bitcoin, 85% indexing, the price rips. And so you get this flywheel of upward price momentum that I think is difficult to comprehend in this moment, but it's going to be so obvious in retrospect that we had all these things leading up to that. And I think 100K, at 100K, competent people who have even a finger in the investment side of their life are calling their brokers or doing it themselves and saying, yeah, I got to put something into this every 2 weeks instead of doing everything into the index, the SPY or whatever. What are your thoughts? Tell me why I'm wrong.
I think you're overestimating the intelligence of these people and not only the intelligence, but the patience, because it's going to go down eventually. Maybe it doesn't go down from 100. Maybe it goes from 250 to 100 or something this cycle. Who the hell knows? But I don't think people are thinking that long term. I mean, I think the midwits too a little bit smarter than that. The 401k system historically has worked, and it is working for them right now. I mean, the 401k, man, if you've been putting in over the past 10 to 15, 20 years in this equity market and you're getting the company match, you're doing great. The S&P 500 is almost 5,500, I think. I mean, went down to, you just look at the long-term charts. I don't have to go over the numbers now.
It's doing well. It's doing well.
You've done very well for yourself. Nvidia is 40% or whatnot of the S&P 500 return this year. Like you're crushing it. So one, I would say there's no reason to change anything. For the boomers, there's no reason to change anything. The other thing would be, if and when we break 25% down to where maybe you would want to change something, if stocks are down 25%, probably Bitcoin's down. And or if Bitcoin's still up, you might go, well, I just lost all this money in the market. I don't want to do something higher risk, which is Bitcoin. So I think maybe that's one angle I would take to address that point. And then I think the other one, which we talk back and forth on off the show, but I think TradFi, they I think you're talking about retail getting in, which certainly I would agree with you. If 15%,
I would say the indexers is the indexers retail. I don't know, like how many 401ks are doing match and they're just indexing too. Like indexing is a huge chunk of the sort of, inflows for everything. And like I look at Nvidia and, the S&P 7 and I'm like, okay, well, like, what are we talking about here? Are all these people really buying Nvidia, or are they just loading up on these ETF products that have an increasing Nvidia weight over the last month or 2 months or quarter or year, like you said, right? Like that's another concern I have, but anyway, continue.
True. But how is that impacting Bitcoin though? Are you saying if MSTR gets to a huge market cap and people keep buying it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what'll happen there. This is the problem I have. I think there is a correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin, but I'm not sure that at Bitcoin 100K, the correlation continues and they rise and fall with each other the way they do now. And we talked about this offline, by the way, the MSTR thing. And like this is happening with other stocks too, that used to be just high beta exposure plays to Bitcoin before the ETFs. The beta is disappearing. So the correlation is shrinking a little bit. And I don't know if it's like meaningful or significant. Certainly it hasn't been too long in the tooth yet, but something is changing there, it looks like to me.
Yeah, I think maybe it's people that are just looking to get any Bitcoin exposure on sale. I think maybe that's it. But I'm looking at like so the number one holder, the conspiracy theorists are going to come in. The number one holder of Nvidia is Vanguard at 8.7%. They own everything. And then out of that, the number one fund that owns 2.3% of Nvidia total is owned by the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund.
Yeah, VFV, right? Is that one, I think? Pretty sure. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and what do you know? They bought 576,000 of it last quarter. Yeah, because they went up. They had to. The second one, 1.55% of Nvidia total, is the Vanguard 500 Index Fund. So exactly what we were talking about. They own 380 million shares. They bought 442,000 last quarter. So yeah, they're buying that, and that is completely having a positive effect on the Nvidia stock price, as it is for Apple, Amazon, all these guys. Completely having a positive impact. I just don't know how. And this, I guess, this briefly on our final point, because I know we're going long, but this brings me to the MSTR. The MSTRs, the future, are going to be small for the foreseeable future. It's the Meta Planets, it's the Semler, it's companies that it's companies that will benefit massively on a Bitcoin run up. Nvidia is worth 3.3 trillion. Even if Nvidia put all of their cash into Bitcoin today, immediately, and they have 30 billion of cash, Nvidia puts 30 billion of cash to Bitcoin. Bitcoin 10x's. Okay, now they have 300 billion of Bitcoin. Well, their market cap's 3.3 trillion. So it's not really going to do much for the stock at all. So that's why, and going back, connecting it way back to the beginning of the podcast, talking about iron, I was like, 33 million by iron. The capital is scarce. Why are they spent? Like, they're raising equity at $4 a share. That's 13 now. Like, if they didn't raise as much equity beforehand, it wouldn't be as high. Like, capital is so scarce. All these companies, even Nvidia, but Nvidia is an extreme example. All these companies out there, they have capital for everything. Like, different parts of the company want different parts of capital for different reasons. They have long-term plans. Like, when you're a company and you say, I'm investing X amount in Bitcoin, you are removing the ability for all these different people and functions and groups across the company to gain access to that capital and to do something potentially productive for the company. So that's why the companies we're seeing, in my opinion, are like Metaplanet was a fucking nothing. I think they literally just had a pile of cash. MSTR basically had a pile of cash. Their software business isn't doing much. And then this new one, Semler, yes, they have their existing business, but they also had a pile of cash. And I think the guy owns it. The guy's name is Eric Semler, right? Like he owns the majority of the company, at least a lot of it. So I think that's the kind of companies that are going to do it. And Eric is going to go out and say, "Hey, we love the idea of Bitcoin as this treasury reserve asset. It's going to go up in value, all that stuff. There's a lot of upside there. For the average big company, Amazon, Apple, Nvidia, Google, Meta, all these companies, it's just more hassle for them than reward. And I think until Bitcoin is a significantly higher price, they're just not going to worry about it. They just don't need to.
It's not a bad thing. Like I agree with you there. It's sort of in the same vein as the career risk thing. Obviously, a little bit different for accounting reasons and whatnot. And you mentioned, too, this idea that shareholders and company execs too, especially these guys who have run companies from the beginning, guys like Zuckerberg, they want that cash available to better the product. We didn't talk about, I think it was one of the European outfits of T-Mobile getting into node running and mining, right?
So we talked about this offline because I was wondering what is the actual dollar amount being put forward?
We don't know.
This vendor?
We talked about it yesterday on the show. We didn't have the number.
Because that's the big question to me. Good. And now T-Mobile, prime example. T-Mobile, let's pop on the terminal here. They generate a pretty significant. They're a wireless company in the U.S. I think they're the biggest. Maybe they're the second. They're the second biggest to Verizon, but they're the biggest in terms of valuation because they're growing more than Verizon. So
right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm looking at last year, $15 billion of free cash flow, and they have $7 billion of cash. So yeah, if I'm T-Mobile, like that. If I was an investor in T-Mobile, I'm like, dude, why wouldn't you use the cash? Why would you not use the cash in Bitcoin? But what goes into running a wireless network? It's, can I invest in more towers to have better service? Can I invest in better radios for better service? Can I buy more wireless spectrum from the government who's going to auction it off, or from other companies that have an excess amount? And they just did that actually. They bought some stuff from US Cellular. So there's all these things that go into it. Or it could be, hey, if I'm T-Mobile, I want to acquire more customers this quarter. I'm going to spend more money on it. So that's why I think it's so much harder to sell a Bitcoin strategy, not only to the street, but to your own employees. If you're a big company like this, there's career risk. If it's $10 million, great. T-Mobile, I think, has a T-Mobile Ventures program. They're investing in startups. Like, that's fine. But I think for me and you, we want to see something way more than that. We'd love to see $1 billion buy. And I think, look, I used to be more positive on it. I used to be, Sailor came out hot in 2020 and 21, like more companies are going to do this, and didn't really happen. I love Metaplan. I love the Semlers doing it. I just think that T-Mo, and the other thing too is that T-Mo, and all these companies that have all this cash, they can make 5% of their cash right now.
Yeah, that's the other problem. You're right.
So their cash isn't losing money, so they, they're making money off that. And so they're not going to put it in Bitcoin.
Yeah. As long as the short end is still 5 and change. Yeah, you're probably right. You're not going to see these guys invest. It's too bad because it really does demonstrate to me that there's a lack of forward thinking. And all these companies, whether it's T-Mobile or Apple is a great example of this actually. Like, they have been caught with their pants down fighting the last war, as the saying goes, in the last year or so, whether it was this headset or the underwhelming iPhone updates, or, not building their own LLM and outsourcing it to OpenAI, causing all these privacy issues. Like, these companies, I think, are sort of reaching their capacity for innovation under the current management umbrella, or under the current suite of products, or maybe just under the current market. Is the candy bar phone at its peak? Is the, how fast do I really need my shampoo and body wash from Amazon? Do I need it that hour? If I can wait till the next day, like the marginal returns, the diminishing returns now on all these quote unquote innovations, it's reaching the point where, at least in my opinion, you'll disagree with this, I'm sure, for good reason. The explorer sort of phenotype, you take a shot now, like you have a chance to do something great and be innovative in the C-suite space and the founder space. You've seen benefits for the companies that have done it. Yeah, it might be a difficult road to begin with. Yeah, you're going to have really unwavering support from your board and your shareholders and your investors. But man, the potential outsized returns, both in terms of like personal reputation and and growth of your company, I don't know. It feels like to me pretty soon you might get there as sort of these other, options become less appealing and return less in terms of, wow factor and bottom line.
I totally agree with you on the companies with a strong founder and people that have voting control, like a Saylor. So I totally agree there. And I think Saylor has proven that because he will go down in history for the reasons that you just outlined. But I guess I would push back a little bit. Just let's use the T-Mobile example. The guy that's the CEO there. Is he being paid to allocate resources to Bitcoin? Not really.
No.
It's gonna cause a bunch of investor questions. All the Wall Street analysts are like, I got to put this in my model now. What's going on here? How much cash is going to be used for it? Man, like they're investing in fiber now. Why are they going to go out and invest in Bitcoin? And then it's the career risk that you mentioned previously. But the question is for somebody like me, if you were in this business, if others were, what's the better call for you? Is the better call to be a high up executive making I'm not saying I'm a high up executive, but I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone who might be. If you're a high up executive, is the right call to keep banking that 500, 750, a mil a year stock options? You can be crushing it and just buy some Bitcoin on the side. Or is the better opportunity to buy a bunch of Bitcoin for your company, and then when it falls 75%, you might get fired? I think a lot of guys are just making that fiat mining cash go a long way.
Yeah.
And honestly, I can't blame them because I'm doing the same thing.
There's a great experiment. We're far afoot here, but or far field. There's a great experiment that was done. I don't remember exactly where, but basically, if you put 10 monkeys in a tree or in 10 trees, and each tree has a banana or 2 bananas, the likelihood of any one monkey going to get any other one banana is pretty small. They all just stay home and guard the banana they have. But the one monkey who goes to get another banana actually winds up with all the other bananas like 90% of the time, because everyone is just so scared, even when they see the results, and the potential, the possibility that leaving your tree under the assumption that no one else is going to take your banana while you're gone because they're so afraid to leave, the results are outsized. The gains are outsized. And you see that, it's human psychology too, right? I'm talking about monkeys, but human psychology is the same. A lot of people would rather, like you said, sit on the 500, 700, especially because chances are to get to that 500, 700, you've already taken your fair share of bananas on the way up. And maybe you don't feel like going banana hunting anymore at that level, which is another problem, right? These guys already have all their scalps. What's 1 or 2 more? I'd rather just sit on the yacht and get on the horn with Zuck anytime I want. Go play golf with Mark Cuban on his after flying on his Learjet or whatever, right? This is it's a difficult conversation to sort of figure out, because these guys are in a different world, both in terms of psychology and in terms of incentive. But fuck, it's bothering me lately to see these companies constantly put out shitty products. Google's AI product, Apple's iPhone, Amazon hasn't done anything. Like what are they? If the only thing holding them back is that they don't want to take a risk, to me, that's no way to live. It's frustrating to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess another thing too is I would say, and I'll use T-Mobile here again as an example. So they are a company that if they're going to do something, they will give advance warning of it. So they wouldn't just go out and buy a fiber company, for example, because that's kind of what they're investing in now. There's a lead up. There's a 3, 4, 6 quarter. Hey, I'm going to mention on the earnings call, might be interested in this kind of thing. And I think I'm using that as an example because there's a whole industry of these companies have investor relations team. They're in constant communication with Wall Street analysts. On a big company like NVIDIA, you could have 40 or 50 of them. And then the chain goes, the Wall Street analysts are in big communication with the huge companies, the huge active managers. Hey, should I be buying Fidelity? Like a Stacy Rosgan. He's a Bernstein semiconductors analyst, very well regarded. He's probably talking to these top investment companies that are investing in semis going, here's what I'm hearing from the company, all that stuff. The problem if you go into Bitcoin is that now that whole chain, they have to dedicate a portion of their day to talking about and learning about Bitcoin, and they just don't want to. It's just it's a negative. It's I don't want to think about it. If you have a bunch of Bitcoin, you're like, I don't want the career risk. If you have no Bitcoin, if you're a hater, if you're a salty critic, you're like, fuck this, man. I can't believe I have to talk about this. So it's just like, I think anybody in that chain just goes, I don't even want to deal with it. And so it goes back to our blog conversation. People just don't want to deal with it. Like, I don't want to write about it in my write-ups. Like, if I'm a sell-side analyst, if I'm like JP Morgan, Jack goes to the conference every year, I don't want to fucking talk about Bitcoin in my write-up because I know I'm going to get a bunch of questions on it. Oh, you're a bullish block because of Bitcoin? Why? And now my whole day is filled with TradFi no-coiners bitching at me that I'm too bullish on block because of Bitcoin. So it sounds so stupid to the outsider, like why is stuff this happening? But it's kind of the way, it's kind of TradFi. There's an illusion, and I'm not saying you specifically have all of this, but in general, there's this illusion that like, man, like I'm at this fucking crazy hedge fund, and
it's supposed to be the smartest guys in the room. That's what we all think.
They're not. They are not, man. I'm in here. They're fucking not. And if they were, they would have gotten corn and been out of it years ago, because who knows the most about how these financial systems work and why it's a scam? It's the people in the industry, and they can't even see it.
Yeah, they're relying on it. You've been great, SB. You said are you going to tell people, like, are you starting Woke Antidote again? It's election season. I need something to listen to. It can't just be Tucker all day, every day. It'd be good to get you and TV back on the mics there.
Me, TV and I, we saw each other recently. We discussed getting the show back in bloom. So we might be back. I mean, so I'm coming to you guys now with a higher percentage of a chance that we're back, and especially ahead of the election. You're right. I mean, at the very least, I got to talk about Trump doing the mining stuff. I mean, come on, I do the pod just for that.
I love it. I'm a big fan of that show. I hope you bring it back. Do you want to tell anyone anything else before we wrap up? Final parting words.
Oh yeah. So briefly on, so it was CoreWeave, Core Scientific. And this is interesting. Okay. So once, I'm quoting from the press release, once the 200 megawatts of HPC infrastructure is operational, the project, that this is the hosting agreement, is estimated to generate over 3.5 revenue for Core Scientific during the 12-year contract term. Estimated annual revenue for the contracts $290 million. So the question there would be, how does that, at what Bitcoin price does it make sense to not sell the capacity and actually have it yourself? And I think in general, it's going to be part you're going to sell part of your capacity if you want to, which guarantees money coming in but limits your upside. And then there's going to be some miners that are pure play doing all Bitcoin upside. But I think I just wanted to kind of to reiterate the point that I said earlier, that I think I think like Bitcoin's in the big leagues. Like Bitcoin we have the ETF now. The Bitcoin mining companies are increasingly being, I'm not sure they're still respected, but at least investors are now appreciating, like when a CoreWeave comes out, which is the hot startup, which is probably one of the hottest besides NVIDIA in terms of in the AI space in general. Anthropic I was thinking of because SBF invested in that with fucking stolen Bitcoin funds. That's why I had it in my head. That's so stupid. Amazon invested a lot in Anthropic too. But yeah, so when you have somebody like CoreWeave going, not only am I going to agree on a 12-year deal with this just out of bankrupt miner, not only that, I want to fucking buy these guys. Like that kind of starts getting people going. It's the riot and the bid off. It's increasingly being owned by the top ETFs, and I think this is for people out there that are kind of anti-TradFi getting into Bitcoin, I would just say this is the natural process. Like you're not going to be able to grow in the way you want if Bitcoin just completely avoids the number one financial system in the world. Like the financial system runs on the US. The US stock market is the stock market. Go look at the world, and all the top companies, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Nvidia, are all US based in the US stock market. So if you're really trying to come out there and saying there is an asset that has appreciated like nothing in history, and it's going to completely avoid everything in the number one current financial system in the country, no fucking way. You're crazy. And I don't understand why you would have this thought. This is nuts.
Listen, people are purists. I don't know what else to say. They know they don't want it. They love the number go up, but they don't love the cause, right? As we have this discussion on CBP almost weekly at this point. It's it's frustrating, but I understand both sides. I just think that the more number go up, the more people realize, like, not only are you bringing in more capital, but you're bringing in a lot of smart people who maybe just are a little late to the party who will make this whole space better. That's the thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you're gonna have. I mean, there are there bad apples in TradFi? Of course there are.
Mm-hmm.
But are there bad apples in fucking 2017 ICOs and 2021 NFTs and DeFi and whatever? I mean, meme coins, I guess, but at least that's another one of my theories that I appreciate the rotation from ICOs to NFTs to meme coins, because ICOs, it was the promise of this new technology is going to take us to a new decentralized Twitter on shitcoin ABC is going to take us to the promised land. And then 21 was like, all right, it's not going to do that much, but Packy, we might have some house deeds on the NFTs. And then 2024, it's like they were all memes anyway. They were memes from the start, and now it's purely boiled down to memes because we know the technology's not there and we don't give a fuck about the NFTs. So I'm not invested in any meme coins myself, but can I appreciate a fun meme coin? Of course I can.
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed some of those ones on Solana. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, listen, a story for another time. SP, great as always. Thank you for your time. People in the audience, thank you for tuning in. People on Twitter, I can't see your comments, but I see there's a bunch of you guys out there. Thank you very much. We will see you next week on Monday night for more CBP fun. Till then, take care of yourselves.
Outstanding.